Hey everyone, this podcast is part of Story Mode, the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. You can support us and gain access to other great exclusive podcasts at patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
Sure.
Yeah. Why not?
Why that's one way to
not.
Yeah. Look, it's all just noise. The human language. We could do whatever with our mouths. It's great.
Yeah.
Hi everybody.
Hello everyone.
My name is David Bell.
My name is Tom Ryman.
And we just watched Wolfcop.
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 Woof. More like Wolfcock because of that sequence.
Yeah. He explodes dick first into the Wolfcop.
Tell him what you told me.
He was a big wolf cop.
Lou, you're a wolf cop.
Yeah, that's the sort of movie we're dealing with.
It's like
here.
the one-sentence review of this film.
Yeah, and we're done.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, yes.
Yeah.
The entire episode.
Well, firstly, I want to thank Steven.
Fine,
Just
I guess
Steven.
we can thank Steven.
Steven, thank you so much. Steven is the producer of this podcast. Steven chose Wolfcop. You'll never believe what Steven wants us to do after Wolfcop.
We'll let that hang in the air to generate some suspense.
Yeah. So when did this come out? This feels
2014.
2014.
Mm-hmm.
If people haven't seen it, I mean, we watched. How many times have you seen Wolfcop? I've seen it once before.
I've only seen it once before. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you like Wolfcop, Tom?
Wolfcop, I enjoy. I think it's one of the better versions of this. One of the better executions of this idea, which is.
And when you say this idea,
the idea of taking a deliberately absurd premise, and genuinely building a B movie around it. So not like. This is a very fine line, but not like the Asylum movies where it's like 18-faced piranha crab man, and it's like a really long, boring movie with like 2 or 3 scenes that feature an extremely cheesy digital effect 18-faced crab man or whatever it is. Like those movies all complete. Like I appreciate that Wolfcop is making an earnest attempt at a B movie with a ridiculous premise.
I agree, Tom. I think this is a premise that when I first heard of Wolfcop, I thought like, nah, I know what that's going to be.
It could go in one of 2 directions. It could go in a Psycho Goreman direction, which is the direction it went in.
Yeah.
Or it goes in, 3-headed shark attack direction, the Sharknado direction.
Right. There's the version where it's like, we're doing this for the meme of it all. Mm-hmm. And by meme, I mean the cover art.
Yeah.
And then maybe someone drunk will rent it.
Yes.
And then they'll pass out in front of it or whatnot.
Yeah, that's the Asylum's entire everything they make follows that model.
Right. The other version does still have a spectrum, and I think it's tough. I'm thinking of fucking Kung Fury, right?
Sure.
Shit, I forget the one with the kids on bikes. That's the Apocalypse. Fuck, I really like that movie too, and I can't think of the name. I'm sure I'll shout it out later, and someone's shouting it right now.
Oh, well, like the Edge of the World or whatever, the Netflix one that just came on?
No, this is older. It has Michael Ironside as the villain.
Turbo Kid,
thank you. Turbo Kid, which takes, like, it advertises taking place in the apocalypse future of 1997. Like, it's all extremely ironic. And I think, like, Kung Fury, for example, had a very short shelf life. And they're making, like, a movie. And I don't think we're gonna care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
where it's like if they're doing a lot of meme stuff and the memes sort of dry out before the movie comes out. And that's what I mean is that it's like it's a spectrum, and I think this is on the more successful side of it.
Yes.
And I'm trying to figure out why that is.
I have a few ideas, but
okay, yeah, so do I. But yeah.
Sorry,
one,
finish
I
that
think
thought. Yeah.
No, I was going to go into that because again, this could easily have been too winky at the camera.
Right.
It could be too ironic.
This is an extremely we talk about it a lot, but this is a very, very fine line for a movie to walk and do so successfully.
Yeah.
It is easy as hell to fuck this up.
One thing I can identify is that, well, first of all, this movie's short, 80 minutes or so.
Even less than that.
Yeah. It's well constructed.
Uh-huh.
And it also, at least for me, goes in a direction that you don't initially think it's going to go. And that was a delightful surprise, because when you think Wolfcop, like, okay, it's a cop that becomes a werewolf.
Mm-hmm.
And that's as much as I knew going into it initially. The realization, and it happens like maybe halfway, because at first it's like, oh, okay, he's trying to like, he's trying to prevent people from knowing about what's happening. Like, you can sort of see what the conflict is because it's a werewolf movie. And the conflict of a werewolf movie tends to be very similar. The moment he does a montage where he soups up his cop car and starts fighting crime, is the moment you realize, like, oh,
yeah, this is the moment it becomes RoboCop.
Exactly, RoboCop. Yeah. It becomes RoboCop, and it doesn't hold back from that, and it understands the joke, and it understands that it can't be too jokey for the joke to work.
Right. It's a hard line.
There is humor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this movie succeeds because it's made by people who are genuine fans of the genre, which is like schlock, B-movie, Carolco, like VHS cult films that you would comb your Blockbuster or like whatever your knockoff local video rental store was, to just look for the wildest covers with that promised like the most grotesque effects, or like, this is how I found Dead Alive, was looking for shit like this.
Right.
So they are genuine fans of that. They made a love letter that understands a lot of what made those films work, which is cleverly using their budget with this movie doesn't make the Asylum mistake of going completely digital, even though that saves money. People don't give a shit about it.
Yeah. And it's classic Wolfman style.
It's a classic Wolfman style werewolf. It's practical effects. There's some digital stuff in there, obviously, because you just need to have that nowadays, and it's very easy to do. But all the werewolf effects are practically done. I argue this movie's saving grace is its editing, right?
The editing's great.
This movie moves.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it moves right along.
Yeah, and it doesn't do the. I just wanted to say real quick, it doesn't do the thing that a lot of micro budget movies do. It doesn't do the Birdemic thing where it just sits on these scenes. Like whoever edited this movie understood perfectly the clip at which things needed to move. There's not a breath of time wasted, really.
I think this is one of the secrets, is that this is a movie. And what I mean by that is that it's not relying on, look at what we're doing.
Right,
look at how ironic it is. They're still doing the movie stuff.
They're still made a movie,
doing character arcs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on top of that, they're still... It's one of the things movies will get away with. Like, I think of the Grindhouse films where they like make it look dated. This doesn't do that.
No.
They're just using the best equipment and making a movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's an instinct when you're trying to make a love letter to like the Verhoeven stuff to make it look dated. And it's like, no, make it for today.
It'll feel dated, but in the correct way, just because of its elements. You don't need to like do a weird filter or anything.
Right. And do the work. Do
mm-hmm.
And the script isn't. Here's the thing: the story isn't uncomplicated. It's about lizard people doing this occult stuff to every like eclipse. Oh yeah, and so what they have to do in order to make it move as fast as it does is they have to be very efficient in how they write.
Yep.
And the thing that like really popped out was the beginning, because we start on the main character. He's a cop. He's an alcoholic, and he gets in his car. He wakes up next to someone he doesn't seem to recognize, or he doesn't seem happy about. He drops like I think his gun under the car, has to get it back. And in the beginning drive to work, he turns on the radio, and we hear the radio people talking about the what's it called? The drink and shoot or something?
The annual drink and shoot.
Setting up the town. Meanwhile, he's driving by all this crime. So we establish immediately who he is, how terrible he is as a cop, and how shitty the town is.
In a police
and what's
cruiser.
Going on.
Yeah, we keep cutting, as we're seeing the shots of the town as he's driving and listening to the radio, filling us in on the upcoming mayoral race, the drink and shoot. It's shots of him drinking aggressively out of a flask behind the wheel of his police cruiser that has a visibly cracked windshield and a hula dancer on the dashboard.
Right.
We get everything we need to know about this character.
Yeah, so by the time he gets to work, we know who he is.
Yeah.
We're done.
Yeah.
We're done establishing.
We don't need to learn anything else about him, and indeed we don't.
Yeah. It works really well.
Yeah.
I would say the sweatiest thing is, of course, going to the library and getting an occult book that tells you everything.
Yeah.
But it's in a million horror movies, and for a movie like this, you kind of forgive it. So it's not perfect.
No.
But like again, it's efficient. Mm-hmm. Same with the radio people. They're not perfect. He turns on the radio, they just happen to be giving exposition.
It is a trope, but like it works.
But it works. Yeah.
Like,
it works for what they need to accomplish, because the exposition is it's necessary, but not that necessary. Like, we don't really need to know why this is happening.
Well, in their defense, they don't go too into it either. We get pretty much the basics. And
but
that's all we really need.
But much like RoboCop, it was smart to tie in his origin with who the main bad guy of the movie is. That's just nice and efficient. It's spoilers. They're shapeshifters, and so a lot of his friends end up betraying him.
Yeah.
Again, efficient. We don't have to introduce a bunch of new characters. Which is funny because it seems to be like the town, it's just like three shapeshifters doing this, which is silly as well. Like, they're just running the town. But whatever. So like all these elements makes it move really fast, like you said, and feel like a very competent film, and leave a lot of room for fun.
Yeah.
Such as him solving, or stopping a robbery as a wolf.
Yeah, every time he shot somebody as a werewolf, I giggled my ass off. It was like it's like he's got a gun every single time.
That's the perfect example of how this movie works so well.
Yeah,
is that he's a werewolf cop. You don't think he's going to use his gun as much as he does.
He does constantly,
but he does.
Yeah, it's like Tango and Cash.
Yeah.
He's just shooting people. And then occasionally, it makes it even funnier when the bad guys will do the bad guy thing if they're like, coming up to start trading blows. And it goes about as well as you would expect because he's still a werewolf.
Right. Yeah, so what happens is they really laid on thick. He's got bottles in his desk. He's a raging drunk. What happens? He goes to the bar that night, right?
Yeah, he goes to the bar. He does go to the bar, but he leaves from the bar to investigate some disturbance out in the woods. He gets knocked out. He has visions of some sort of ceremony that took place with the young guy who's running for mayor who turns up dead.
If you watch the visions quick enough, you know who the bad guy is too. Like they flash the mayor in those visions, which I thought was funny.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, go on. So
it's basically every so often they do a ritual. The shapeshifters that secretly run the town do a ritual to turn somebody into a werewolf so that they can then chain him up and drain his werewolf blood, which they use to power themselves for the next several decades or whatever. And they typically pick a useless person, like they say the town fool, I think, or the town drunk.
Yeah, for whatever reason, right?
Yeah,
so people just don't.
So people don't miss
believe
him. Yeah, it's they just pick the town fool and turn him into a werewolf and bleed him and drink his blood for the next few decades. That's the life of a lizard person.
Apparently.
Yeah, I mean,
they
it
just
looks
rule over
great.
this small town.
Yeah, you get to rule over a small town in the Canadian countryside, and you can just change your appearance at will from a young person to an old person and vice versa. It's dazzling.
Yeah. And the movie plays it pretty straight, except like he has the one funny friend.
Yeah, he's got his funny friend who, if you notice, is the guy who gets sectioned by a piece of barbed wire fence in Final Destination 2.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah.
He's the one who keeps doing like knuckle bumps throughout that movie.
Yeah. And I asked them to go to his house and hide all of his porn so his mom doesn't find it.
Right. Oh, that's solid.
Yep. He's back in the sequel too somehow. So I've got to see that.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, I'm excited for the sequel. Yeah, this movie, in terms of twists, it doesn't give a shit, right?
No.
Because it immediately kind of, like I said, it flashes the mayor in that sequence. So if you're watching fast enough, and then his first transformation, the bartender is clearly in on it.
Yeah, she's behaving pretty fishily in that.
She
first
sees him turn into a werewolf dick first. Can't stress that enough. He's pissing.
Well, she doesn't witness the dick burst.
No. But she witnesses the murder.
But we do.
Yeah,
we see.
Yes,
it.
we do. We do. This does. In terms of werewolf transformations, this is probably one of the best, right?
Yeah,
he's
it's
pissing at the bar. His piss turns to blood.
Yeah.
And then we see just his dick.
Dick just inflates like a hairy blimp and explodes.
Yeah.
It's pretty great. It's low tech. Although there's like 2, I think, transformation scenes, and they're pretty low tech. It's just a guy in a werewolf suit tearing through a very thin layer of people skin, and you never see it like full body. Like you can see how they did it, but it's still like it's still like cool. And just so that they knew that they had to, because it doesn't, from like an effect standpoint, it's like it's cool and it's getting the job done, but it's not blowing anybody's minds. So they realized they needed to conceptually blow people's minds, which is why he transforms Dick first.
Right.
And it's great.
And it is delightful. He kills a few people. He wakes up. He starts to slowly realize that he's
a
werewolf, a Wolfcop. And his friend, is this the same sequence where his friend tranks him and ties him to...
This is when he wakes up handcuffed to his friend's bed.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, you were a werewolf, man.
Yeah, and so, it already starts deviating, because, I feel like... I don't know. I guess I haven't seen that many werewolf movies, but I feel like when it's from the point of view of a werewolf, it's kind of hush-hush, right?
It depends. Yeah, it's this... Yeah. It could have been like a thriller. It could have been like I've got to keep a terrible secret. We definitely weren't necessarily expecting RoboCop, but that's what this movie is.
It makes sense. When it happens, you're like, oh, of course.
Yeah, of course. Why
of course
else,
it's RoboCop.
Why else make him Wolfcop if he wasn't going to be a Wolfcop? Yeah.
So we first get into logistics where it's like, we're going to put you in this jail and watch you transform. I was thinking about this as it's not... I think it's manageable to be a werewolf.
Yeah.
It's actually, if you publicly be I'm a werewolf, I feel like all you do is just be like, yeah, I just have to be caged every full moon. And on top of that, I don't know, let's charge people to watch, right? Like that could be your whole career.
I feel like there's a world in which you could make it work for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think...
you could, offer your services as a wolf cop.
As a wolf cop. Well, this is the perfect kind of werewolf, because the rules of this one is that he's still kind of him.
Mostly,
as a werewolf.
Yeah, he appears to be like 98% him.
Yeah. Shit. So this is where it's like, where are they going with this? He turns, he's in the jail, and they get a call, and he answers as the fucking wolf cop.
Takes down notes.
Yeah, and he's like, hello, yeah. And so that's when you realize, oh shit.
Yeah, they're just doing this.
We're just gonna do it. And that's the delight of Wolfcop. And then you think it can't get any better, and they're like, no, we're going to have a sex scene.
Yeah, we're going to have a Wolfcop sex scene set to the movie has like, and I'm sure it was like either the director's band or just friends of the filmmaker's band, because they do all of the songs and all the original music in the movie is done by one band. And they do this like pitch perfect imitation of the kind of song that would play in like a sex scene in Cocktail or something, like a sex scene song from the 80s. It's a perfect imitation of it. It's so goddamn good.
Yeah, going back to the tone, they don't... It could have very easily made this a joke. And it is a joke, I should say, but it's a joke because it's played completely straight.
They play it straight. That's so important. Like,
it's a tender lovemaking scene between a lady and a wolf man.
Lady and a werewolf.
In a jail.
A hunched over werewolf.
It's like softcore pornography between this lady who is just immediately down.
It is Red Shoe Diaries with a werewolf in it.
Yeah. And so like it's I think that's the peak of the movie. Because at this point
it is the hands down the funniest part of the movie. And
it's funny in that what you've already witnessed, where it's when he starts just fighting crime and you realize that's the movie it is. And I guess my only gripe is I wish the movie had got to spend more time on that aspect. And again, it's a very efficient movie. So she turns out to have betrayed him.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly was like, I kind of want a romantic subplot straight out of, a RoboCop type movie.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, she's actually the mayor. She's a changeling. His friend is... So he's like... they do a good job with this, though, because basically all his friends and everybody turns against him, but meanwhile, there's this other cop who's he's pushing her away, and they end up partnering up.
Yeah.
And it works really well.
Mm-hmm. I think
because she's like all business,
Yeah, and it turns out they have an actual connection. Like her dad and his dad
their
both
background
died. Yeah, I think this movie made the correct decision to spread out its influences, if that makes sense. Because it's like, yeah, it could have given us the romantic subplot, but we got kind of the best thing that we could have gotten out of that with the tender love scene, and so they just move on.
Yeah.
And I think that's
true.
For a movie that is micro budget, that has to keep moving, like it's maybe 75 minutes long when the end credits start.
Yeah, 80 minutes with credits,
It doesn't really have the luxury, I don't think, to hang on any one of these influences for terribly long, which is a mistake that a lot of other movies that try to do this can make.
It's not all over the place either.
No, it's not.
So,
it's not like every one of its influences makes sense. They're related enough that you could put all these elements into one narrative and it still feels kind of organic because it's just.
Oh yeah,
it's just very 80s. I don't know how else to describe it.
No, there's a movie where like they would have this tender lovemaking scene and then she would betray him.
Yes,
like. That would exist in a movie without a Wolfcop.
Mm-hmm.
It's very 80s, but again, it doesn't feel like it's trying too hard to be, because it's got little splashes of everything, I think. Because, like, for example, the lizard people, that's when we get into the territory of, like, sci-fi original or, like, something like a Birdemic or, like, B-movie.
And that's very specifically internet culture, too. So it's even more towards like the meme aspect of things.
Yeah, or like a movie that would be on Best of the Worst. Where like it's like some idiots had some rubber masks, but they work it in nicely. And they knew they needed like that extra layer. And it never at any point, because at the end when he's chained up and the eclipse is happening, they just keep playing it straight for the most part.
Yeah.
But they don't play it too straight either. They have fun with it. And so like you get into it. You don't give a shit.
There's never we talk about this so often. There's never a moment where they turn to the camera and like, can you believe this Wolfcop shit? Like, it never gets to that point, and that's the kind of instinct that sinks it. Otherwise,
yeah. Well, they do as much as they need to. Where the shop owners, like, it was a fucking Wolfcop.
Yeah,
like they still understand that in the world this isn't normal. It just really walks that line really well.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, at the end, he defeats them, and, I don't know, it goes back to being a wolf cop?
Yeah.
And then the wolf cop rap happens?
Yes! Again,
because that was
same fucking band. I'm pretty sure it's the same band, just doing a pitch-perfect imitation of back when movies used to have a rap song that summarized the events of the film.
Right. The difference between this and a movie like that we watched recently, Killjoy 2, which also had a rap at the end.
Oh, it did, didn't it?
Oh, yeah, it did. I personally found that movie a little too slow, but like that's a movie where it's like you can't tell if they're going for ironic or not, because it just doesn't. It's just it's a clown, you know. Like, we have so many scary clowns. Who gives a shit? Like, they're clearly banking off of people ironically buying it, but the movie itself is just kind of shitty. And I guess that's what we already outlined with like the sci-fi originals, where it's just like they don't put in the effort. This just really puts in the effort to be like, okay, you rented us based off our name. We're not going to disappoint you.
Yeah.
That said, I don't see myself watching this movie that many times.
It's not a movie that I can throw on constantly, but rewatching it now for the first time in several years, it was like, oh wow, this movie was as good as I remembered it.
Yeah, it has a lot of fun moments. It's just not, since it's not that jokey, since it plays it straight, as long as you remember the movie, you kind of remember the joke.
Right.
Which is, again, that's fine because it's really well made.
Yeah.
And maybe other people will watch, love watching this. What's with, I got a question, Tom.
Sure.
This is kind of deviating.
Mm-hmm.
What's with small town cops and werewolves? Because this is similar to another movie that came out more recently.
Yeah.
Called The Wolf of Snow Hollow, which is a very different movie. It's not a copycat of Wolfcop, but it plays off very similar themes, which is small town cop who's a fuck up, and a woman police officer who's like clearly better. What's going on there? I
think, well, with small towns, you just have you have an environment where cops can even more get away with being a big fish in a shitty little pond. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you just kind of can do whatever you want to when you're in a town that has two cops and you're one of them.
Right.
And also, it's just, I mean, that's like if it was in New York City, there'd be the National Guard would respond to a werewolf, right? You know, it's just, it's the perfect combination of person who has too much power trying to deal with a problem where they need assistance but aren't necessarily in a position where they can get any, so they suddenly have to walk the walk that they've been talking.
Right. There's also, if it's a murder mystery, like a lot of werewolf stories are small towns, even the old ones.
They're whodunits. They're chamber whodunits, basically.
Yeah.
They're chamber murder mysteries.
Small town, which is weird because both Wolfcop and Wolf of Snow Hollow aren't really whodunits. I don't want to spoil or talk too much about Snow Hollow because that's not the movie we're covering. But like they aren't, and it's weird that it's a missed opportunity for that setting. I also think being a cop and being a werewolf, it's the idea of having a lot of power, a lot of rage, and
nobody being able to say boo to you about it.
Exactly. Yeah. Like in Wolfcop, he's an alcoholic, which is clearly, it could have very easily been a very serious analogy for being a werewolf.
Yes.
But he never quits drinking, and I love that.
In point of fact, it's his spinach. Like, that's how he's able to save the day at the end, is he's dying, and then he picks up a flask and fucks up the rest of the shapeshifters.
I will say, if they wanted to do a true trope to old movies, he would quit drinking, right? That's part of the trope.
Right. He'd look at it and growl and throw it out the window as he drives his Wolfcop mobile.
I was thinking about Die Hard with a Vengeance, where he crushes his cigarettes near the end, which was always funny to me because they don't really establish that as something. You remember that? He's on the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he just like quit smoking, and I was just like, if there was ever a time for a cigarette, it's now, John McClane. Like, I don't know what about this journey caused you to quit smoking. But I mean, good for you.
You know, I'd need to rewatch Die with a Vengeance real quick, but I believe they just been fished out of the ocean at that point, right? So
they're just wet?
Isn't the implication that the cigarettes are wet?
So he's just not quitting. He's just like, my cigarettes
are ruined. So he goes.
Maybe it is. Yeah, you're right. Because they jump into the ocean with. He's calling Holly at that moment.
Yeah, he gets blown off the boat. That's his arc. Is he's going through a hangover. So his cigarettes aren't an option anymore. So he goes for the aspirin, which has the location of where Simon Weaver is.
Also, his arc is I should call Holly. Never mind.
Well, things keep coming.
Because he never
up.
actually.
Things keep coming up.
I know. His arc is that he's maintaining being a fuck up.
Right. He's maintaining his hangover and his suspension. That's the arc of Die Hard with a Vengeance. Anyway.
Yeah. Great film.
It is a perfect film, yeah.
Yeah.
Much like Wolfcop.
But yeah, Wolfcop. I don't know. It was weird that, both Wolfcop and Wolf of Snow Hollow have very similar themes despite being very different movies.
I mean, it's, there's a lot you can do with the idea of having a lot of power in a very small vacuum.
Yeah. This doesn't really comment on being a cop.
No, this is RoboCop with a werewolf. Like we've said it a few times.
Yeah, it's less satirical RoboCop.
Yeah.
It's RoboCop but without making any observations about the police.
No, it's like watching someone play with RoboCop action figures, but like a cool someone.
Like Teen Wolf action figures and RoboCop action figures.
Yeah.
Or something. I don't know.
But like cooler than that.
But like cooler than that.
Because Teen Wolf's kind of stupid.
A little bit.
If you've seen it lately.
Is RoboCop as... Because I know RoboCop 2 is. RoboCop 2, we watched it recently, is funny. It's just funny and grotesque. Mm-hmm. RoboCop 1, does it play it even more straight?
It play... No. No, it really doesn't. You say it really doesn't.
Is it on the level of Wolfcop?
I mean, it's the exact same tone as Starship Troopers. Like, when was the last time you watched Starship? It's
right.
It's pretty. It's not disguising the satirical bent.
I think what makes RoboCop special, as opposed to something like Wolfcop, is that RoboCop somehow in the zeitgeist and like the marketing at the time, they were like, this is a kids movie, we're making toys. And like when I grew up, I hadn't immediately watched RoboCop, and in my head it was just a kids thing, like Ghostbusters, because it was like, yeah, RoboCop action figures, everybody's dressing up like RoboCop for Halloween, which is weird when you watch it and you're like, this isn't that.
No,
it is like, I mean, this is Verhoeven, everything Verhoeven, which is that like there are people who for some reason don't think he's in on the joke. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, that's that's a whole other tangent that I don't really want to get into. Suffice to say that I think our critical thinking skills about the way we approach movie criticism specifically has gone way downhill.
Yes, but Verhoeven specifically is always that thing. And there's a spectrum there with like, he did Basic Instinct. Uh-huh. That's one where you're like, I'm not sure if this is completely funny, like certain scenes. But then there's other stuff where it's like, you must know this is hilarious. And just getting into Wolfcop, like it'd be weird to think of someone in the future not understanding that this is silly.
I think, but I don't know how you could make that mistake. I mean, I
feel like people made that mistake with RoboCop. And RoboCop's hilarious.
And with Starship Troopers, I think it's part of it has to do with they almost go all full Verhoeven in Wolfcop, but not quite. Like as you mentioned, we still have the shop, even though the shopkeeper is like totally jazzed, and like at the time that Wolfcop is saving his store, he's like, "Thank you, Wolfcop." He literally says "Thanks, officer" to him. But like later when they're taking a statement, he's like, "It was a fucking Wolfcop." Like.
I don't consider that winking at the camera.
No,
I think that's what someone would say.
Correct. All I'm saying is that element is missing from when Verhoeven does it, because Verhoeven tends to make the he elevates the entire world to being something that's larger than life.
He makes dystopian movies, so dystopian worlds are all on board.
Right. It's all in its own universe. Like this doesn't take place in reality. This is its own. No. This is a heightened reality, and he brings all of it into it. Whereas, just real quick, a movie like Wolfcop and a lot of kind of the way that modern, or not even really necessarily modern movies, but like most other mainstream movies approach this same problem is by having a couple of anchors throughout to let people know that it's supposed to be satirical, right? Like they have somebody saying, that's a wolf cop, this is fucking weird, just to let the audience know, hey, relax, we know it's all silly too. But Verhoeven doesn't do that in his movies, which is maybe why people have problems cracking those particular nuts.
I don't know. This is part of why Wolfcop works, is I don't think Wolfcop really does that. I think it mostly plays it. I think Wolfcop kind of elevates the world too, because the whole town is ridiculous.
Yeah, they're lizards in hoods, man. Like it's
exactly.
No, I think Wolfcop does the tiniest version of that you can do.
Yeah.
Because most of it is, this is an entirely separate world where like Wolfcop breaks into a barn meth lab, and for like 6 seconds they're like, oh shit, it's a Wolfcop, and then the bad guy literally says, get him.
Yeah.
Like that's the world we live in Wolfcop.
So good.
It's so good. And then they start fighting him. Like it turns in, like you genuinely forget that it's Wolfcop for a second, because there's like, oh, the guns are out of bullets. Now they're fighting. Oh, how's this guy? Oh, right, he's a werewolf. He just ripped his face off.
Yeah,
like
he's just gonna tear them apart.
Yeah, and then he lands on the windshield, so his friend turns on the windshield wiper, and he's just like, oh, it just made it worse.
I think the key.
So good.
I think the key. When does he adjust his car to be like a Wolfcop car?
Is it
after the robbery?
It's on the way to the. It's either right before. It's either on the way to the robbery or after the. I think it's after the robbery. That's right.
Yeah.
He changes in the cell. They get the call for the robbery. They thwart the robbery. They leave from the robbery to kit out his car, and then they go to the meth lab barn.
Right. And so it's such a beautiful slow formation of like, oh, it's a superhero film.
Yeah, he's just settling into it. Like he had the same brief period of adjustment that everyone around him did. And then he's like, well, I guess I'm Wolfcop now. Obviously, I need a Wolfcop mobile.
Yeah, and the beautiful line, I think, for me, is when the werewolf starts doing, like, using human things. Mm-hmm. Using the phone, using guns, using the car. It's and then doing a romantic sex scene, all leading to that.
Damn it!
They do such a good job at. It's one of those. I think what makes it work really well too is that this movie starts in reality, more or less.
More or less, it's still pretty heightened.
By the halfway point, there's a werewolf driving a car, fighting a meth lab, and it's like, yeah, I see how this happened. Like this all checks out. Mm-hmm. And it's like a frog on a hot plate with that, and they do it so beautifully.
It really is deceptively a very well-made movie.
Yeah, I think that's really what. I mean, it always boils down to that, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's just, is it well made? Are they making a movie? Mm-hmm. And like this is kind of walking the line, because I would say as a plot, which we haven't really talked about, it's not that great. No. You know? It's kind of a weak plot.
Sure.
But the fact that we've only just started talking about that shows a lot about the film.
It's not distractingly weak. It's not overly convoluted. It's not like confusing or it's what it needs to be. It's an action movie plot.
Yeah, they don't have the budget to like really escalate things.
No.
Like I'm wondering why they didn't save the meth lab explosion for the ending, end on an explosion. But it still works.
I think I understand. There's something to be said for putting a big set piece where that set piece was.
Oh yeah.
It's almost like
it's an emotional climax for sure.
Yeah, and then it leads into the fucking sex scene. My God, This movie's second act is expertly constructed.
It really is well constructed.
Yeah.
Because my final note that I wrote is that anybody could make this film, but not everybody can make it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it comes down to, is it's not the idea of Wolfcop. It's like, yeah, it's a fucking Wolfcop. Like that,
it's
that, you know, you hear that and you're like, oh yeah, I instantly know what that can be.
There's a reason we have one RoboCop. And there's a reason this is the only Wolfcop movie that's made any kind of impact. It's anybody can do it, but it's still pretty hard to pull off.
Yeah. And we haven't talked about stuff like the actors. They're all great.
They're all fine.
Like,
yeah.
They're all doing the thing.
Mm-hmm.
The comedic guy, I really enjoyed him. What does he keep telling him to do? Lose your gitch for science?
Lose your gitch, yeah, which you can tell that is slang that I am unfamiliar with. I'm not sure if it's exclusive to Canada or up north or the country, or I don't know. And you can tell through context clues what he means, but it's the fact that I did not know that particular piece of slang makes that scene just delightful.
I always love a good new slang.
Yeah.
And especially a slang that's just, it's not distracting. It's just like, ooh, I would like that word, please. I will add it.
Where it's where it's, you're not even entirely sure it really is slang, but it's like, it's clear what it means and they keep repeating it. It's a good gag. It's a good gag.
It's a good gag.
Yeah.
It's a good film. Very tasteful sex scene. That's the word. It's a sex scene with a lady and a wolf cop, and they clearly are like, let's make it tasteful.
It is Red Shoe Diaries. Like that is it is 100% what it is. Red Shoe Diaries with a werewolf. It's so fucking good.
If you haven't seen this.
Yeah, I think one of the best ways to sum up Wolfcop is like the biggest laughs come when you just kind of stop for a second and take stock of what is happening.
Yeah.
It's less about like laugh out loud moments as it is that the movie just executes these concepts that are funny so well that you're just in it and enjoying it because they've taken a ludicrous idea and made a fun movie out of it, and then you stop and think about what that idea is. You're like, holy shit, the werewolves having sex.
There's it's a really fine line. And again, I think what it is, I think what we're circling is that, for example, Kung Fury.
Yep.
Which is fun. It looks good. But they just sort of introduce elements where they're like, look at this. It's so random.
Yeah, here's Hitler, here's dinosaurs, here's Thor. It's also about 40 minutes long. It's a whole thing.
But they don't, it's funny to say, they don't do the work to explain it in their world. They just throw it at you.
It's just
and
everything.
Go, isn't it wild how we thought of that? And it's like, no, because you can think of anything. Anybody can think of anything. What works with Wolfcop is getting there. It's getting from reality to this moment that's so ridiculous, but it feels organic. And that, I think, is the key to something like this. Otherwise, it's like, I'm not impressed.
Otherwise, it's
by your randomness.
It's absurdism, but
it's do the work to get us there.
Yeah, like Kung Fury in a lot. Like I still like a lot of Kung Fury, but in many ways, it is like
me too.
A great
Absolutely.
example of like the worst parts of absurdist humor, where it's just like just anything at any moment.
Yeah, and I mean, it's weird. Sometimes that works. Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Yes.
Monty Python and the Holy Grail is just a series of absurdist sketches.
There's a long list of successes in that particular column, but it is more elegant than just whatever the wildest thing you can think of in any given moment. Like there's more to it than that.
It's the fact that Marvel got us to a point where we can feel sad in a scene with a talking tree and a raccoon, and you have to give it to them that they didn't just add that in and be like, "Wow, it's nuts." They got us there slowly. Mind you, it took them like 8 movies to do it.
Yeah.
But that's what this does. It gets us to a moment where there's a Wolfman cop, and they've done all the work to have this Wolfman cop have a romantic sex scene.
Like a really luxurious love scene. Like it's about 2.5 minutes long.
Right. And like they managed to get us there, but still surprise us with it, where it's like right before it happens, you're like, oh shit, are we really doing this? You still have that absurdity the coming out of nowhere, but they've earned it in their story.
Yeah.
Albeit not a particularly amazing story, but still they do the work. And that's what it is doing the work to get us to those absurdist moments. I feel like if I went and rewatched Holy Grail, there'd be a bit of that, but that's more about the fact that the world they create, makes it all feel
everything is
believable.
Consistent in that world. And like you said, it's also a series of sketches where they had a pretty defined they defined the bucket first, and then the rest of it just drops into that same bucket.
And then of course whether or not they meant to, the ending is just one big punchline to everything. Which is like, oh yeah, these people all just need to be arrested. This is modern day times apparently. They're just running around England causing havoc.
Well, I
don't know.
The idea that they would just, everybody in the Crusades would just be arrested. That's funny.
Right.
That's funny.
But like modern arrest. All right. Well, that implies that they're like LARPers. like that none of them are actually the people they say they are. They're just people running around the countryside of modern day England. And I love that headcanon that that's what it is.
Yeah. That might even be more than what they thought about it. I think they just thought that was funny.
Oh, well, I know from what I heard is they ran out of budget.
Well, yeah.
And that's why the ending happened.
And having the cops from earlier come. Yeah, anyway.
And just arrest everybody. And getting fucking thrown in a cop car at the end. It's the funniest image.
Yeah, the ending is great, but like, just that first shot of Lancelot with his hands spread on the hood of the car. Anyway.
Oh, God, yeah.
It's just like, he's just getting arrested. All right.
Yeah, they're just getting arrested. Things have gotten really real for them. Suddenly.
Yeah. So yeah, bringing it back to Wolfcop.
Quality
motion picture.
Thoughts?
No, it's available on Shudder. I mean, that app just continues paying dividends, man.
Yeah. If you like the Psycho Gormans, if you like the Kung Furies, if you like the Turbo Kids, all of which that I just said are wildly different films, but I think people understand the thread.
I haven't seen Turbo Kid, but I feel like Psycho Gorman has a lot in common with Wolfcop.
Yeah, Turbo Kid plays it pretty straight. I have to watch it again, but I really enjoyed it. It's very weird. It's not really like and I think Wolfcop does a little of this too, honestly, it's not trying to be another movie. It's trying to create its own world.
Right.
That makes you feel like these other movies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Turbo Kid does that too, where it's like, here's an elaborate dystopian world. You haven't seen anything like this, but you feel like you have, and then we're going to throw Michael Ironside in there.
They do enough so that you recognize the universe, but then they're like we keep saying, they did the work to actually be like, okay, but we really did want to make our movie that is a love letter to all these things, so here is that movie.
We're going to take it seriously. We're going to give people arcs. We're going to do the stuff.
It's not just a series of things, because otherwise that would just be like, what, epic movie or something.
Right.
They actually sit down and make their own movie that would be added to this catalog.
Yeah.
It just incorporates all of its influences and inspiration really, really well.
Yeah.
Solid
Good
film.
RoboCop.
Watch it.
Not RoboCop.
Wolfcop.
Watch Wolfcop.
Watch Wolfcop. You bastard.
Thank you, Steven. Thank you so much, Steven. Yeah. How are you doing, Tom? What's up?
I'm doing great, man. I think you should maybe tell them about our Patreon.
We have a Patreon. Patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. If you go on there, you got them exclusive podcasts like Tom and Jeff Watch Batman.
Oh, yeah.
Fox Mulder is a Maniac.
Oh, yeah.
Star Trek: The Next Futurama.
Oh, yeah.
These are all podcasts that we have on there. Every Friday night we watch movies with our patrons and other things.
Yeah. Other things. We also have a store at tpublic.com/stores/gamefullyunemployed where you can get t-shirts, masks, mugs, stickers, posters, all kinds of things. So check that out. I don't know. We might be moving it soon, so we keep getting hit with takedown orders.
Right. Yeah. If anybody could tell us a place that's not TeePublic, let us know. We should let's screen print our own shirts, Tom.
Let's do it.
You want to do that?
Yeah.
Let's do it in our garage.
We can sell them to our friends.
Yeah, let's start a zine.
At the shows we play at the rec center for 15 people.
God.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. Rec center, church basement.
Yeah.
Maybe like a Shakey's where they move the tables.
Oh, dude, if we went to a Shakey's, let's take this on tour. Let's take the podcast on tour.
Yeah, Shakey's only tour.
We can play to sold-out crowds of 15 at Shakey's.
Yeah.
Across this fine nation.
Stay tuned, folks.
Yep, our Shakey's tour.